As per government guidelines, students must not present themselves to schools if they have travelled internationally. Several reports have indicated a small minority of parents are disregarding the guidelines set out by the government in these instances. What provisions are in place by the Department of Education to police these occurrences? Can you clarify if the students can be refused entry to the schools, if Garda can be contacted to verify if the students in question have been overseas, and take necessary action with the child's parents?
Minister.
From Monday the 9th of November, Ireland has implemented the EU coordinated traffic light approach for those travelling into Ireland. In general, this requires those returning to or entering Ireland from orange or red list countries to restrict their movements for 14 days, and this includes school staff, parents and students coming from abroad to attend school in Ireland. Restricting your movements means staying indoors in one location and avoiding contact with other people and social situations as much as possible. Schools have a duty of care of its students and staff members. If a school has reasonable grounds for believing that its duty of care towards its staff and students is being undermined, schools can refuse access to the student or staff member concerned during this period. The whole school community is working together to create a positive and safe environment for teaching and learning in the particular and oftentimes challenging context of COVID-19. Ensuring that all students and their parents are made aware of the public health requirements as they relate to schools in a COVID-19 context is also very important. The Department, working with the education partners, has developed a range of information and resources for parents and students to reinforce the importance of the safety control measures in place in school to minimise the risk of spread of infection observed by all students and the school community. Contacting An Garda Síochána to establish the travel arrangements of students and staff is not considered appropriate, Deputy.
Donoghue.
Minister, can you tell me who is responsible? Is it the principal, the teacher, the Board of Management, the chairperson? Does a teacher have to make these decisions? Which of these persons is it, Minister? These children ideally should be at school and they are allowed to roam the streets without supervision during the day, which is something that nobody wishes. My understanding is that a person must fill a form called a COVID-19 passenger form before they enter the country. In this case, where more than 50 passengers on board a flight returning from a wedding in Spain and returning by the ferry from the UK. How were these regulations placed, since many of these families were attending schools? In such cases, are the schools informed of the practice, and how is the regulation managed? Minister, I need answers to these questions. I need to know who makes the decisions, and I would like to know, is it the chairperson, is it the principal, who is it? So we can give direct guidelines to schools to let them know who makes that decision.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy, I can't speak specifically to the case that you would raise there because I wouldn't be familiar with that case. But in general, I would say to you, as I have outlined here, the school does have a duty of care to its students and to its staff body. And if within that duty of care there is a view that that duty of care is being impeded by the return of somebody who has travelled abroad and is not observing the 14-day restriction or whatever restriction is necessary at that time, the school can act. They have every right to refuse access to anyone who hasn't fulfilled their obligation to maintain their restricted movement requirement. And that operates and has operated and has indeed operated well throughout the schools. There are 4,000 schools, 100,000 staff and 1 million students, and that is not an issue that has been raised on an ongoing basis with the Department, because in this context, as indeed in all contexts, the schools are using sufficient practicality and wisdom and know-how as to what to do in that instance. But equally so, I'd like to say that parents have exercised very good judgment, and parents have been highly responsible in how they have operated within the COVID-19 guidelines, whether it's within travel measures or whatever the case might be.
Deputy O'Donoghue.
Thanks, Minister. As again I go back to this is a minority. I must acknowledge that we are talking here about a minority that are holding communities and their businesses to ransom. The resilience shown by the communities and the businesses must be commended, and I encourage the people of these towns and the surrounding areas to support the businesses who have shown courageous strength to keep their doors open while working at a loss. The continued work is ongoing in our communities by Garda Síochána with these minorities, and a special mention goes out to newly appointed Superintendent Elaine Magner and her team. But Minister, we are seeing here that there is and we've spoken about parents and children that have all the restrictions, they have abided by the guidelines. What I am talking about here is a minority of people that have no regard for their lives or the people around them. And it's how they're policed and how they're affecting the communities around them when they're not policed.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy, and I appreciate the sincerity with which you raised the point. And again, I will reiterate to you very genuinely that the school, if the school has any suspicion or believes that its duty of care has been impeded by the actions of anyone within the school community, they have an absolute right to refuse access to the school. And I have every confidence that, that those measures would be implemented appropriately by schools.